Welcome to the On Your Mind podcast, where we are changing the mental health narrative, bringing hope and solutions. Here's your host, Timothy J. Hayes, psychologist.
Mark Hattas is a leader, executive coach, and award-winning author. Mark has built and sold a tech powerhouse in Chicago, and after which he navigated a mental health crisis and emerged as a seasoned coach for others to help them be at their best and live their divine purpose. Mark, welcome. Good to see you again.
You too, Dr. Tim. Always good to see you.
I'm curious to get an update. I know that you've written a book and committed to writing some others, and I'm anxious to have you tell us about the O Coalition and the book, The Lowly Prophet, and the others that might follow.
Yeah, thank you. So there was this inspiration, during one of my meditations back it was 2023, and I just heard this inner prompting to start this prayer group, and it was called the O Coalition, and I got the name as well in that prayer session, and I just said, "Okay, God, what does that look like?" And the message kind of confirmed to do it, and even got 15 names of people to go invite. And I just sent some emails and texts, said, "Hey, I'm going to start this on Tuesday if you want to join." And there were 8 to 10 people for about 18 months that met. And during that period of time, that fall actually of 23, as I was praying again, I heard this message of write the lowly prophet. And I kind of talk to God this way, and it's not like I'm hearing God with my outer ears. It's an inner voice, but it's just a very whole frequency. It's a very healthy place that I find wisdom comes from. And that book, I was prompted to write in 3 weeks, schedule 5 hours a day for 30 days. I did. Started 3 weeks later, and 9 days later got the book. It just flowed through. And so that was the first of 11 books. I was told in that initial conversation with God that there would be 11 of these. What was really interesting, Dr. Tim, is I had written a novel already that was under a pseudonym, and I did it under a pseudonym because I was afraid that if I put my own name, that my business clients would think that I was weird and would steer away from me. And over the years, that was published in 21 or so. It's called The Prisoner of War. And over the years, I would say, more confident that the faith foundation was the place I wanted to go, because that was really the roots of how I got healthy after going through pretty significant crisis in my life in 2011 through 2014. And so these books have been meaningful for me. Of course, I get a lot out of writing them, and I have shared them with a number of people who have felt that they could go places that they had trouble going before. They could heal from things that were twisted in their mind, and they kind of got untwisted. And they're teaching the core of how I got healthy, which is the Beatitudes, right there in the book of Matthew. And it continues through the stories. I'm writing the 5th one starting October 7th, just in a couple days. But 2 are published, The Lowly Prophet now and The Veil Breaker. And I'll show those a little bit longer. And then the 3rd, I'm in editing. It should be done by the end of the year. It's called Where People Go When They Die in War. And these are just really powerful, healing, spirit-centered tools that build on the principles that are right there in the book of, that I grew up with, the Bible I'm looking at here. And the idea is to make them more accessible, especially with mental health, because spiritual integration is such a foundation to mental health being found, whether it's physical, mental, emotional solutions. The spiritual part is really critical for a lot of us, if not all of us, but it certainly was for me. And I had this, I'll pause there, see if you had anything to.
Well, I think it's what you're tapping into, the same kind of thing that Carl Jung, the great psychiatrist from many decades ago, was forced to reconcile with how so many people would come to him and they'd have an addictions crisis or some kind of an addictive problem that was destroying their lives. And his discovery was that there had to be a spiritual solution to this. There had to be a spiritual component to anything that would help people in a consistent long-term way. So, it's recognizing what so many of the great spiritual teachings, which are the most practical teachings you'll ever find, right? They're not pie in the sky and they're not just wishful thinking. They're actual studies about how our mind-body energy systems work. And if you want to call it spiritual, call it spiritual. If you want to call it psychological, do that. But as you've witnessed, and we've talked about for pretty much a couple decades now, the idea of the whole picture, functional medicine, holistic medicine, integrative medicine, is critical to getting good long-term outcome. So the fact that you're bringing this into that whole picture realm lends me to believe it's going to be quite successful.
Well, and I hope so, because if it's not, it's only because I didn't follow the continuous promptings that keep coming, because I do have awareness that it's just so helpful. The first church I went to talk at was just recently, and I'm looking for other churches and schools and things to go share these with, because they're just so powerful. And while preparing, by the way, Carl Jung came up, and I found a quote, and I'm not going to get this exactly right, but effectively said, never was there anyone who was over 35 years old that healed without returning to the fundamental, foundational, roots of their religious system, to to faith, essentially. All of those who actually healed found some kind of faith healing journey that they had to return to. And often when he found them, they had left that. And so there was kind of a coming back, and in coming back in a healthier way, it actually supported their process. But one of the other things that I found more recently than Carl Jung is I was talking to the pastor of this church, and I've talked to a number of pastors at different denominations. This first church happened to be Catholic. And what is consistent is they don't really have an answer fully for mental health challenges. It's a struggle, but it's not that they don't have answers, but it's often that they're not even told until after. It's very common. This particular pastor said that he'll usually find out after. And so 3 months after someone's been struggling, it's like, oh, you wouldn't believe what happened to Johnny over the last 3 months. And then the pastor finds out later. It's like, well, and there's confusion there. Well, why didn't you come to the church? Now, he didn't say this, but a different pastor from a different denomination had shared the message with me that many pastors don't even know what to do with it. So it could be that there's just this belief system that the church doesn't have an answer. And so I think what we have, though, with the Beatitudes, when they're practiced effectively, the answers come. As you know, you get into an aligned state, and the inner prompts, the inner support, can be extremely helpful, just to even know what doctor to go to, or whether a certain medicine is right for you, or a certain practice. And so by bringing a faith-based fiction series into a church environment based on rooted scripture with a practical application, there's not a lot out there like that. And even the novels, there are a lot of groups that read fiction novels. And one of the pastors told me, he said, yeah, there's women especially, I guess 70% of novels or fiction are read by women. I don't know if that's true or not, but that was what this particular pastor shared with me. It's like, well, yeah, and what they're reading books out in the secular world. Why not have a faith-based, entertaining fiction series that's going to bring them deeper into their faith? And that's one of the things that this does. And it reorients and retrains the system as someone reads. There's actually programs and curriculum with it. If someone wants to do it, you can just read the book and enjoy the story. But there are practical steps to take before reading. For example, in the Lowly Prophet, breath work is, of course, foundational. First Beatitude talks about making your home in the breath, softening the field, the body, mind system, and allowing for those active forces of God to really be present. And so there's a little exercise in the curriculum to have people do that while reading chapter 3. So you read the opening, chapter 1, 2, do the exercise. And the only point of chapter 3, more important than the content, is to actually do the practice while reading. And can you get through the book, the chapter, maintaining your breath consciously? And most can't. And I've even told people, like, hey, if you get stuck and your breath gets shallow, pay attention, notice it, and you might go back a paragraph or two, breathe again, start your conscious breathing, and then read through. Because while they're reading the chapter, they're retraining their system to automatically breathe under stress. And that's an example of kind of a simple way to put these into practical application.
Yeah. My mind is telling me to ask you to clarify where you're getting your understanding of the Beatitudes, because I've read the King James Version of the Bible, and I didn't hear anything about making your home in the breath in that first Beatitude. So
yeah,
how are you getting the insight you're getting?
So there's a few different sources. The first introduction was from Michael Rice, and he has a book called Enlightenment. And they had 25 translators from the East and West translate this old book called the Khabaris Codex that was discovered, I think, in the 1930s.
In the Khyber River region of what would be now, I think, Turkey.
Thank you. And so they did this translation, and Michael found it to be so impactful. He asked his bishop, "Hey, can I go share this with people?" And he got permission to do that. And there's some healings that were happening. People were really changing very rapidly, and it became his life's work. And you can find his work at whyagain.org or whyagain.com. But when I first got introduced, that was 2012. When I first got introduced to them, but it didn't resonate that they were as tightly woven, because there's a lot that Michael teaches a ton. But this particular one, then I came across Way of Mastery with JM, who you're familiar with, and he talked about the Beatitudes in a little bit different way than Michael had, but close. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. So I remember watching JM's video and having the Enlightenment book out, and then having my own experience of healing, because as you are familiar with, it was 2011 when I was really struggling with my mental health, and I said, God, if there's a way to heal this, show me the way. And like a breadcrumb trail, I was shown this path. And so I had my own dynamic of this inner teacher awakening, which led me to actually say yes to go to Michael's workshop in the first place. And so over time, so I'm mapping my own personal experience with Michael's interpretation, not Michael's, but his translator's interpretation, and then JM's interpretation. And then Dale Allen Hoffman had a whole series on the Beatitudes, and I was checking that out. It's like, well, what are the commonalities? And there's some others out there, that have looked at the Aramaic. And one of the things that is really remarkable about the Aramaic is it's no different actually than the English, but it expands on it, and it's easier to see that in the King James, and I don't have King James here, but I've got like I have an English version of a Bible that's not translated from the Aramaic. It's from Greek, and it's difficult to get from the English to what the intention of the Aramaic was. But once I saw through experience and seeing these different interpretations, it's like, oh, okay, it's there. These are instructions. If they are practiced, you will get the promises. Like, it's not maybe or something, or if you're good enough. It's like, no, if you do the practices, you will transform. You will heal a lot of, or you will heal. The distortions in your mind will start to clear up. There's an activation of an inner guidance system that guides you toward happiness and well-being. There's this unwinding of the effects of our errors when we get into it. It's incredible. And then ultimately, as you go through the process, you tap into your divine mission, and you move through fears, and you get to a place where the courage comes, and there's confidence of who it is that you are. And all the masks that I experienced, I had started to collapse. And I just found that I love myself and love my family, and I love God. It's like an awe was restored. It's really a neat process, and it always works. You just have to practice it. And most people can't get there from the English, But if we look at the Aramaic and what it teaches us, and then back into the English, it's like, oh, it's there. It's just not really clear. And so I'm trying to make it more clear through the stories. And it's my little, drop in the ocean of contribution to help people connect with it and realize like, oh, wait, this is for me. I can do this and I'm hungry for it. There's one woman that came to the talk, this most recent talk, and I had done just one session with her with the Beatitudes. And she said, Mark, that was more effective than the last 5 years of therapy. One session. Now, I think she probably thought she was completely healed and never would have an issue, and that's not how it works, right? It's you keep returning to the Beatitudes. There's another layer,
And it's important to understand, you and I know this is true, we've talked about it before, that everything in her life prior to that led her to the point, including the 5 years of therapy.
Of course, yes.
There's all kinds of tilling of the soil and softening of resistances and defenses that happen in a year or 3 or 5 of therapy, set her up to be able to open and allow the entrance of the tools and the gifts that your work together brought to her.
Absolutely. And there's even when the student's ready, the teacher appears, right? And that's so true. And I make it absolutely a clear point, like I'm not the one doing anything with people who are having that kind of experience. I mean, it's God doing it, in my opinion. And we were given, thankfully, Jesus gave us these tools way back. It's like, hey, they're right there. So we were given the tools, and it connects us back into that whole relationship, so that we have all the faculties available to us in our human life, to live a vibrant, healthy, amazing life.
And to do that, I think we have to make that step to recognize we aren't just a material being, right? We're not just protoplasm. We're not just skin and bones. And when you wake up to that, that's what so much of my understanding of your work and things like the Beatitudes and the ones that you've mentioned are just trying to get us to walk through the door that says, there's more going on here than your 5 senses can show you.
Yeah. And what's remarkable too is if we go to 5th grade science class, we're going to learn about, core principles of, how our world works from a scientific perspective. And we move on and we learn physics as we get later into science. And one of the things that appears to happen when people go through this is it's almost like you tap into new laws of physics that you didn't even know about, that are available to anyone who is in that healthy spiritual relationship, with their
source.
Source, yeah.
The energy that animates them.
Yes.
The intelligence that gave rise to them.
But the Beatitudes, I want to emphasize this because it helped me get it, because oftentimes I'd go to church and I'm hearing the gospel and hearing the homily and okay, cool, all good stuff, or I'll read the Bible. And the Beatitudes aren't something that are just to be read. They are a practice. And I use 2 metaphors. One is playing basketball. And we know the Beatitudes are blessed are, right? Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the meek. All these blesseds. And I think of basketball and all the things that it takes to play basketball: dribble, pass, shoot, defense, block, rebound,
physical conditioning, endurance.
Yes, all these things. And so think of it this way: like, blessed are those who dribble, because they have a clear path to the basket. Blessed are those who shoot because they have an opportunity to score. Blessed are those who play defense, because they can prevent the other team from scoring. And you have all these blesseds, right? And then you get to the end, it's like, hey, anyone who does these things, we're going to call a basketball player. Blessed are those who do these things because they will be known as basketball players. Okay, great. Now apply that to the Beatitudes, and you have all these blesseds. Blessed are those who do all these things, and they're going to be called what I would call Christs, like another Christ. We are called to live as another Christ. And that calling, it's like, well, it's not that we're Jesus, and that can get confused a lot, especially when someone's going through a spiritual awakening, and there's new things happening. There's confusion that can happen there. And psychologists see a lot of that, when I'm sure you have, where it's like someone's just not seeing very clearly. But the truth is, I think that we are called to live as another Christ, the wholeness of the office of the Christ, the one who is pure and whole and refined
or just connected to that Christ mind mentality, to that higher realm of wisdom that you were talking about.
Right. And if you can do that for, 5 minutes, that's great, but what if you can do it for 10 or 20? What if you can do it for an hour or 3? And my question that I started asking when I was still not well, back in the 2011 to 14 time, the question when I learned these was, well, what if we could be in that state all the time? And that's the question I keep asking, like, what would society look like if we all were whole? And how would we see each other? How would we interact? How would we treat ourselves? And I think we'd be a much different world. And I think we can do it. I think that's what's happening. I think we have the invitation, at least, to do it.
Well, can we back up and just talk about the word Christ for a moment or two?
Sure.
Most of the people in my generation grew up at least a very strong implication, if they had any kind of a faith-based, Christian faith-based education, that Jesus' last name was Christ. So that when you use the word Christ, you're talking about one person. You're talking about an individual that, whether you want to believe was also human and God, or just human, just God. And what you're referring to here is the use of that word to designate something other than just a person. How would you define what you're using the word Christ to indicate?
Yeah. So there's 2 things I want to share here. One, I'm not a theologian. So there will be people who have a much deeper understanding of these things than I. But what I can share is my experience of being one way and then being another. And I would say the way I was I was nervous. I was very reactive. I operated mostly from inadequacy and less than energy, not comfortable in my own skin, trying to please others, trying to get loved and liked and seen and all those things. And that is what I would call not Christ. Like that's a very clear, like, okay, Christ didn't teach those things, but that's how I was experiencing my world. And it was a very big stress bundle that, I'd have very big highs, like, oh, success in the world, and very big lows, like, oh, the world's falling apart. And so it was this bouncing up and down. It was not an easy life. Now, having gone through the practice and the refinement and the process of transformation, it's much like a caterpillar transforming to what I would call a butterfly, where it's like there's a new thing, some new life here. The old life, the old me has fallen away, and something changed in me, and there's something new. It's like what I would truly call being reborn. And the rebirthing is the birthing of, the Christ, I would say, in me that allowed for that to be more present. Now, I'm not like Jesus. I'd say that he was born that way. Well, I wasn't. I went the other way and had this whole transformation. The stories that I've grown up with, it's like this guy came out one with God from day one. And then he's like, hey, I'm going to teach you guys how to do this, right? You too can do these things and more. And he even has, I have to go search and find it, but there's a I think it's in John, where he talks about, he's praying that first off, his followers experience this union relationship with God. He's like, Father, please, like, I give it to them. Like, I want them to have it, right? And then all the people that, us too, he goes from there to then us, that all the rest of the people, like, may everybody have this. And what was he calling us to? He wasn't saying anything other than what he was, right? The full expression of a Christ. He was saying, let's let everyone experience this union relationship with God, because when they do, wow, like that's what we're called to. That's what we're called to. So that I've heard the original word, if you look at it from Messiah and the people have been anointed as for years before Jesus, but he fulfilled, the messianic prophecies, right? And so he was the fulfillment of, but he didn't fulfill it and then say, I'm the guy and I'm going to leave you. He's like, no, he fulfilled it, dies, returns, doubles down like, hey, here, take this gift of the Holy Spirit, because that's going to unwind the effects of all of your errors, and you're going to have this inner teacher with you all the time, and let's do this. Like, let's teach this. Like, he wasn't teaching it so that his name could be up there as Jesus, just as a man. It's like, no, he was lifting up everyone into this relationship with God that he knew and wanted everyone to know. And it's the greatest gift ever, to transcend death and then come back and tell us, like, okay, now we've got some work to do. Let's get after it. And if we didn't have work to do, then we wouldn't have the mental health problem that we have in the world. We wouldn't have people twisted up and killing each other and hurting themselves. I mean, it just wouldn't be happening, because it's not something that someone who's aligned with the principles of Christ would do. What's your take on it, Dr. Tim?
What I'm distilling from what you're saying there is that the word Christ refers more to an office or state of being rather than a person. And so just like we wouldn't say, mayor did this or president did that, we would say, Mayor Larry did this, Mayor Beth did that, President Sue-Ann would do this. It was just this idea that he had the connection and he wanted to share it. And he knew that the connection wasn't about him as an individual, but it was about existence in the connection of this field, this greater intelligence that keeps everything moving and the planet spinning and our hearts pumping and all that. And that anybody, as you mentioned earlier, has access to the doorway within themselves to that same source of wisdom.
Absolutely. Although we don't, I would say, I'm pretty confident. We don't know the first thing to do to untwist that, right? It would be like our brains don't have a clue, which is why we have these resources to tap into these connection points to allow for the unwinding of things that are within us.
Exactly. It's the same kind of thing that I do with people on a regular basis in therapy, is that I introduce them to tools, and if they apply the tools, they see changes in their lives. And yet it's not me or them making the changes. It's them applying the tool. And then this clarity happens, this access to other wisdom, this ability to tune into all of the information that our energy systems are trying to feed us all the time. And we've been trained and conditioned to ignore or numb out from or distract from. But it's the same kind of thing with the faith issue, is that, if you use the tools that are presented in your faith tradition and you apply them, you don't have to understand exactly how they work. They just work.
And yes, that's the key. So I know someone who had done some work with you, and I remember he came back and he's like, well, yeah, I like him, but he just wants me to practice these tools. He wants me to practice these tools. He keeps talking about these tools, and he was not wanting to do that. And I said, well, what do you want? He's like, well, I just want this to be fixed. And I said, well, if you trusted Dr. Tim, that he knows what he's doing, he's giving you these tools, and you practice the tools, don't you think that you'd get some benefits from it? And unfortunately, there are a lot of people out there, they just want like a quick Band-Aid fix.
It's not just a lot of people.
Can't you just make me feel better?
That's right. It's not just a lot of people. It's our entire culture is geared towards that instant gratification. And that literal, putting people on a pedestal or deifying people, and it's unproductive.
It's disgusting. And I would say that in my past experiences where I was saying, hey, I was really off in a lot of ways in my life. And I'm not perfect right now either, but I would say that the contrast that I was showing before is big. And I was right there, same thing before. It's like, well, I don't have time for that. I just want to feel better. I want to And there's short-term, instant gratification that you're mentioning, that I would say that if anyone out there is thinking that way, you will get there way faster, orders of magnitude faster By learning the tools and doing the work. You can't play basketball if you don't pick up the ball and dribble. You can't learn the skills, if you don't run plays with your teammates. You have to do the work. And the neat thing about this work is it's learning who you are as an individual, learning your strengths, your interests from a whole perspective, not trying to fit into the world perspective, but from a whole perspective. And guess what? When you do that, the things that you need are going to be plentiful. And you're going to have all your needs met. I was talking to a guy just this morning. I did an interview on my podcast, the O Coalition, which anyone can find on YouTube. You go to @the O Coalition. And we practice the Beatitudes, and I interview people really from a faith standpoint, hear their stories, things like that. And we use the tools. And this particular gentleman, he was $126,000 in debt, struggling. He had $2.11 in his bank account, and he finally realized, of himself, he wasn't going to figure this out. And so he prayed, and essentially the message that he got was to give. He had $2.11, and the message is to give. But he trusted it, and he did. And he eventually started giving away like 50+% of his income, and everything he gave away came back. And it's a really remarkable story. I can't wait till it goes live. But it's like the logical mind can't get there. The logical mind's not going to say, I'm going to go give, but for his life at that particular point in time, that's what his divine guidance informed him of. And he did it, right? Well, the only way he did that is he got to a place of letting go of all the ways that he had done it. He had exhausted them all and got to the very, very bottom. It's like, let's not get to the very, very bottom. Let's interrupt that process, clean up the dynamics going on within us at this point, and start from where we are and move forward. And now you can accelerate your healing, your life's missions, your relationships. I mean, whatever's going on that might be a struggle for you, it'll start being restored to a healthier place. But you got to do the work, part of the process. And then just like anything, work becomes play if you like it. And the neat thing about these tools is, Tim, you can vouch for this. There's so much mystery and awe and wonder that comes from the process that a hunger starts to develop. It's like, wait, this is fun. Right? In the beginning, it might just be a conscious choice, though. Okay, even though I don't see the fruits yet, I'm going to plant these seeds, right? I'm going to, in this metaphor, I'm going to do the work here, but I'm going to plant these seeds. I'm going to go out and water. Haven't seen anything come out of the ground, but I'm still going to go out and water because that's what the instruction is. And you're not going to get fruit for years from that apple tree, but if you continue to nurture it and allow for it to get the sunshine and take care of it, you're going to get fruit. And that's the promise of this. The fruit is going to come, when someone goes through and does these tools.
So I know we're getting close on time here, and I have a hard stop in about 10 minutes, but I want to come back to this idea about giving, right? And the thing is, like 17 thoughts are in my head right now. Get them all in, Tim. Say everything right now. One of the things is that any tool that's really powerful can be used for construction or destruction. And so many of us in this culture have witnessed the televangelists, saying, send us money and give, and whatever you give to us is going to come back to you 1,000 times, etc. And for most of my history on the planet, what I've seen of that teaching about giving has been weaponized as a tool to victimize people. You might say the less fortunate, might say the downtrodden, and yet it comes from a really solid, observable principle that this giving is it's not about giving and taking, it's about giving and receiving as a flow of energy. And if I'm sitting here believing that I lack and that other people have so much and that please give to me, and my whole focus is on giving from them and receiving to me, it gets stagnant. But if I'm willing to turn it around and I'm going to trust this process in order to get something new. Guy Finley likes to tell a story of a wise father who had a daughter, and he gave the daughter a cedar chest and taught her how everything she has that she takes out and plays with has to go in the chest at the end of the night. And for years, she had her little chest, and she loved to draw, and she had artworks and easels and things in there. And she loved to draw horses. One day, she reached the age where she thought, "Hey, Dad, I want a horse." And he said, "Okay." She said, "I know I don't need a horse right now, but I want to get a saddle and start learning, to tan it and, to polish it and whatnot and take care of it." He says, "Okay, so what are you going to get rid of in your trunk to make room for the saddle?" "I don't want to get rid of it. I love that. That's my stuff." If she can't get rid of, right, if she can't open to that flow, then she can't bring something new into her life. We're all that way, even though we don't realize it. We're all stuck. Any of us that are unhappy or in pain or suffering in a way, we're all stuck doing the same kinds of things we've done a lot, wishing that things will get different. And what you're offering, in my understanding, is a way to look at something that's been there already. Most people have heard of the Bible. Most people who've been in the Christian churches have heard about the Beatitudes. And you're offering a way to look at them from a very practical perspective, literally offers people a set of instructions for how to improve the quality of their life. Full stop. If you want to layer that faith and with words of God or with words of Christ, you can do that. The point is, you'll get these results if you apply these tools.
Yeah, and you have too. I've worked with people who have no relationship with God, but they are trusting enough to try the tools, and they work. There are people out there that proselytize to convert people to a certain religion. It's like, these transcend religion. They really do. But one of the things that I do find is that there's a quickening. Someone who has a faith foundation, the concepts applied quicken their healing process. It's just, there's a quickening. And eventually, if someone doesn't have a relationship with God and you do these tools, you're probably going to have a relationship. God, source, love, the full, because how can you not? Because you're going to change. Now, it's not in order to get you to a place of that. It's just that becomes a natural outcome, is that faith grows, and you're going to be brought into situations that you won't be able to explain without an active, present creator that's part of this whole system.
Well, and as one of my favorite teachers says, one of my favorite quotes from Guy Finley is, "There is nothing more practical than true spirituality." Right? So if you're offering people a way to understand how their mind-body energy system works and how their physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health can be improved, that's a huge gift.
Speaking of gifts, before we go, if anyone wants to, you can actually start reading this for free. You go to the lowly prophet is the thing you're holding up. Go ahead. Oh yeah, if you want to read the Lowly Prophet, you can start reading the Lowly Prophet for free at thelowlyprophet.com/free. Clever in there.
Very, very clever.
thelowlyprophet.com/free. And not only that, but there's this meditation, about 15 minutes, that I lead people through, that is really powerful in the beginning to kind of get prepped, for the reading journey. And then if you like it, you can pick it up in any number of ways that you'll find there.
Wonderful. Well, I greatly appreciate your taking time to meet with me and share this work. You've got what you just said about the lowly prophet, and people can read it free. Well, how do you prefer people reach out to you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, if you email me at mark@thelowlyprophet.com, that's probably the best way to reach me, mark@thelowlyprophet.com.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to...
You'll be able to see lots more. If you go, there's another website, theocoalition.com. You can go there and see the other books, and the link to read it for free is also on that page, on the books page.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to reading the rest of your books. I thoroughly enjoyed The Lowly Prophet, and my time participating in that, was that a video support group we did? Kind of a reading...
Yeah, you were part of the pre-release reading club, or The Lowly Prophet, which, by the way, it's now, it was the number one bestseller, but it's now won 6, I think, awards. So it's been good. And from a faith standpoint, Dr. David Salvato is a theologian, and I was directed to him when I had contacted this church to get it approved first, and he read it and gave it an informal imprimatur, which is Latin for ready to print, and said in a quote, hey, this is very spiritually sound. And he thought it was really good for small groups to be reading this within a church environment. So if anyone's questioning, like, okay, is this going to lead me deeper into my faith or pull me away? It's going to lead you deeper into your faith.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for the work you're doing and your willingness to take the time to talk to us about it today. And as I said, I look forward to reading the other books as they're available.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it.
All right. Blessings. Mark Hattas is a leader, executive coach, and award-winning author. Mark had built and sold a tech powerhouse in Chicago, and after which he navigated a mental health crisis and emerged as a seasoned coach for others to help them be at their best and live their divine purpose. His award-winning series of books and the spiritual movement titled The O Coalition has led many to find their way through difficult situations to restored mental and spiritual well-being. He assists people to restore their health, clarity of purpose, and find the courage to act. Mark's fascinating story encourages and inspires people to lean on faith using practical tools, the same ones he used for his own restored health. You can start reading his books for free or get your own copies at theocoalition.com/books.
You've been listening to the On Your Mind podcast, offered by Journey's Dream, where we support people through mental health challenges to a place of true and lasting well-being. If you love our show, we invite you to visit onyourmindpodcast.org to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our helpful resources. Thank you for listening.